welcome to Northwest Newsweek. It's a project that's been in the works for more than a decade, aimed at addressing issues of food security, housing, and unemployment on remote First Nations. On Wednesday, a memorandum of understanding was signed between Discovery House, KKETS, and Ebmetung First Nation to officially begin training for green housing builds in 5 Matawa communities. Corey Nordstrom has that story.
It's been the goal of Patrick Casey for more than a decade to help create solutions for remote First Nations. And as the executive director for Discovery House, he's nearing the finish line. An agreement between Discovery House, KKETS, and Ebmetung has now been signed, outlining the commitment to train Indigenous youth to build housing complexes in 5 remote First Nations. And as Casey explains, these aren't just regular housing units.
It's designed to deliver housing, power generation, clean drinking water, liquid and solid waste management, which nobody ever likes to talk about, but it's very important, as well as an abundance of agricultural produce.
Casey has partnered with Microsoft, Samsung, and a number of similar companies to make this happen. The complexes will be from 12 to 60 units. Ebmetung Chief Harvey Yesno notes how much the solar panels and wind energy from the complexes can help his community powered by diesel, but says it's the greenhouse being active for 8 months of the year which excites him the most.
Eating healthy foods like vegetables obviously is a big contributor to restoring better health amongst the population. Right now we're dealing with 1 in 4 people with diabetes issues.
Some training has already began for the 70-plus First Nations youth, and by the beginning of November, smart classrooms with high-speed satellite internet will be installed in each of the 5 Matawa communities.
One of the things that they told me is, oh, Dave, that's great that you have this program, but I have young kids at home and I cannot go to Thunder Bay or Timmins or wherever for this training. I'm sorry I can't, but I'd love to.
The construction craft worker is a trade training, as well as the horticultural technician, and the environmental technician training is a nationally recognized training program. So regardless of where the youth decide to go with the preliminary education, then we start to specialize their training in the coming years.
The first housing complex built in one of the First Nations could be started as early as 2023. Corey Nordstrom, TBC News.
The Northwestern Health Unit reported 9 new cases of COVID-19 in Kenora on Friday. 4 involve schools, another comes from a daycare, and the other 4 come from community-based spread. Medical Officer of Health Dr. Kit Young Hoon says all of the new cases are within the city itself. The Keewatin-Patricia District School Board announced 2 positive cases, both at Valley View Public School. The Kenora Catholic District School Board has identified 1 case each at École Sainte-Marguerite Bourgeois and St. Thomas Aquinas High School, which are located next to one another. 1 classroom at the high school has been shut down since the positive test. It's not been disclosed whether the cases involve students or staff. The health unit is still investigating if the 2 cases at Valley View are related. If so, an outbreak could be declared. But Dr. Young Hoon says that word is being used carefully.
I think the word outbreak can often feel like a scary word for members of the public, and it needs to be recognized that we are using outbreak in a very technical way. 2 cases in a school does not necessarily mean that there's widespread transmission through a school. It could mean that there's transmission through a classroom. So we do try and assess the situation for each classroom to determine what needs to be done to reduce the spread of COVID-19.
She adds the health unit will officially identify the names of schools if an outbreak is declared at any institution. Well, some of the region's mayors are speaking out against the COVID-19 reporting practices of the Northwestern Health Unit. When a new case is confirmed, the health unit doesn't typically identify the specific community, and that doesn't sit well with some area leaders. Adam Riley reports.
It is frustrating when you're expected to, people want answers and you can't provide them, right?
Mayor Deb Ewald says when the Northwestern Health Unit announced a new case of COVID-19 in the Rainy River District, which has over 30 communities and spans over 3 hours of driving distance, residents in her municipality of Rainy River began asking her if the virus had once again returned to the community. She found herself unable to answer those questions.
It might feel like it's being not transparent, but that's not what we're doing.
transparency is important and we want to provide people with the information that they need, but privacy is also important.
Ewald says privacy shouldn't be a concern, as there are safeguards in place with the municipality to prevent names from being released.
We all take oaths of confidentiality, so we wouldn't know, people, I trust the people in the town office and my council and myself. We wouldn't say it, and we don't want to know names, we just want to know if it's in our community. I don't know if the health unit will change their mind or whatever, but to us, it's pretty ineffective.
Fort Frances Mayor June Call says she and most of her council share Ewald's concerns regarding case localization. Her community serves as a hub that residents from other municipalities utilize, and worries should an outbreak occur in Fort Frances without proper warning, it could pose a risk for others.
I think it's important that our communities all know exactly where there is a case so that we can be more vigilant. And I think that people in that particular town have the right to know that it is actually in their community.
Near the beginning of the pandemic, the NWHU had 8 smaller, more concise zones where cases were reported, but as of July 27th, the agency changed its policy to combine the 8 into 4 expanded zones. Dr. Young Hun says she is willing to speak in detail about case localization procedures with municipal leaders and is even willing to update the policy should the need arise.
Whether it's an increasing number of cases or an outbreak situation or a situation where we're not capable of connecting with all the close contacts of a case, then we will provide more public information to identify the community if we think that's helpful.
Adam Riley, TBT News.
The final touches are being put on one of the 3 bridges that connect the United States and Canada here in the Northwest. The multi-million-dollar project was spurred by a bridge collapse in Minneapolis more than a decade ago, and its completion has officials on both sides of the border excited. Adam Riley has more.
A new bridge connecting Baudette, Minnesota to Rainy River, Ontario is now open for the public, or at least the public who are able to travel for essential business. The $39 million bi-national project was instigated by the Minnesota Department of Transportation following the collapse of the I-35 bridge in Minneapolis in 2007, which killed 13 people and injured over 100 others. Construction has been ongoing since 2018, and the bridge's completion, according to Rainy River Mayor Deb Ewald, has the potential to bring more people into her community to travel and explore once COVID restrictions lift.
We're only an hour from the bridge at Fort Frances, and it is actually a really nice area to drive through, and then you see a different part of the United States when you come that way too. So, and the other thing is there won't be a toll. I sort of assume that to help pay for it they would put a toll back on, but it's toll free still. So that's kind of good too.
Ewald notes the new bridge is capable of accommodating vehicles the old bridge couldn't and is hoping to save part of the old structure for heritage and tourism purposes. Demolition has already begun on the former span, with the deck plating currently being removed.
The plan is to complete the removal of the truss, or what they call the superstructure, this year. And of course, that's always weather permitting in our area. And so once that is complete by next summer, in June, they'll begin the removal of the piers and the underwater work.
Site says the underwater work will be staggered due to differing regulations on fish spawning seasons in the border waters. Thunder Bay Rainy River MP Marcus Pulowski says Canada contributed $13 million to the project, which he says plays a vital role in his riding.
Those places out there are pretty intricately connected with the United States. And I know on Rainy River, I think it's figure skating or something. They have one club between Baudette and Rainy River, and same with hockey. It goes back and forth, and there's a lot of families that are on both sides of the borders. So, and then obviously there's a lot of commerce that goes back and forth.
A virtual ribbon cutting is anticipated to be held during the last week of October. Site says hopefully come October 2021, the COVID situation will be under control and an in-person ribbon cutting can be held at the bridge site. Adam Riley, TBT News.
The province is providing new funding for small northern businesses to help them mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. Once again, Adam Riley has details of the $20 million Northern Ontario Recovery Program.
Over the last 6 months, the world has completely changed, and it has had a heavy impact on small businesses, especially in Northern Ontario. Now $20 million in funding from the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation to a new Northern Ontario Recovery Program aims to soften the blow, according to Energy, Northern Development and Mines Minister Greg Rickford.
Essentially is an opportunity for your business to apply for up to $25,000 in grants, so not a loan component to this, to help you run and make your better business as we face what is still, especially with the second wave, an uncertain future.
Rickford says these grants are retroactive to March of this year, so businesses won't have to spend new money on a variety of costs, including construction for new patio spaces, HVAC air filtration systems, the purchase of new tap payment systems, and even online expansion and marketing that must be COVID-19 related. Rickford says he takes issue with the lack of federal support through FedNor, but is leaving the door open for them to join.
If FedNor does do something in response to this, we lead, they follow. We would be happy and be very open to a stackable concept. That's something that we take that we do anyways. Certain programs within NOHFC are allowed to have stacked applications.
The announcement of this new program means that as of September 30th, the NOHFC will be winding down to allow for the recovery to take effect over the next 3 months. Then Rickford says it will be replaced with a new and improved version of the NOHFC, which will be announced in January.
In collaboration with Northern partners and my fellow Northern colleagues, we are developing a streamlined NOHFC program that will make it easier for more people and businesses to apply and support more projects, especially in rural and northern communities.
Businesses looking to apply for the grants have from October 1st until December 31st to do so. Adam Riley, TBT News.
4 years after the 7 Youth inquest, lawyers representing the families at the center of the probe worry that progress in implementing the jury's 145 recommendations has stalled. Aboriginal Legal Services released its annual report card on Wednesday. For the first time, the overall grade slipped this year as all 3 levels of government saw their individual marks fall. After 3 years of steady progress from all parties implementing the 145 jury recommendations from the 7 Youth inquest, the overall grade handed out by Aboriginal Legal Services has dropped for the first time from an A- in 2019 to a B+.
The work that is yet to be done on the recommendations are, as I mentioned, are the long-term recommendations. And some of those are difficult. They take significant investments, and most of those investments will be made by the provincial and mostly the federal government. But they are essential to make.
All 3 levels of government saw their individual marks drop this year. Canada slipped a full letter grade from a B+ to a C+. Ontario fell from a B+ to a B-, and the city of Thunder Bay dropped from an A to a B. City Manager Norm Gale says while the pandemic has slowed some of the work, the city's resolve remains the same.
Like other business lines and strategies that we have in the city, COVID-19 has disrupted our progress, but progress has continued, albeit at a slightly slower pace, and we continue to work.
Thunder Bay has implemented 26 of the 31 recommendations directed its way. Others, like developing a public education campaign on racially motivated crimes, are being rolled out soon. Matawa Learning Center and Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School are among the Indigenous organizations that received an A+ for their efforts. Lawyer Caitlin Casper calls the report card a stark annual reminder of the privileges that many Canadians take for granted, such as access to education close to home.
My daughter is 14, and I could not imagine in all her youth not being close to her, being able to parent her, and not being able to care for her. The thought of being told that she didn't come home, of any youth in a boarding house not coming home, that they're missing and no one has acceptable answers, is incomprehensible and inexcusable.
For the 3rd straight year, the Thunder Bay Police Service wasn't issued a grade. The lawyers say that won't change until police address the issues of systemic racism laid out in the 2018 OIPRD report. When we come back, a day of remembrance for the survivors of one of the darkest chapters in Canadian history. September 30th was Orange Shirt Day across the country. It's an annual day of remembrance of residential school survivors and those impacted in the years since. Lakehead University hosted a virtual gathering this week to mark the occasion. Avery McRae has more.
And what I experienced there is
Even decades after leaving residential schools for good, the pain and memories don't get easier for Martin Falls First Nation member Bob Baxter. Orange Shirt Day is an opportunity for First Nations, governments, schools, and communities to come together in the spirit of reconciliation. Baxter shared his experience with residential school through Zoom with the university. At age 72, it's been over 50 years since leaving the schools, and while he has forgiven the past, Baxter hasn't forgotten it.
I carried a lot of anger all my life towards the residential school system, towards the ministers, and towards just the general non-native society in general. You know, I just grouped them all together, and I said, well, these are the kind of people I'm going to be dealing with. You know, I don't have nothing to do with them.
The legacy of Phyllis Webster out of BC that started the Orange Shirt Day because of what happened to her when she went to residential school with an orange shirt on, and it was taken off her immediately. So it's a legacy of hers and a reminder of the impacts of residential schools on all of our kids in our communities.
While there was no Orange Shirt Day walk this year due to the pandemic, many people wore their orange shirt to visit the Sacred Flame under the teepee outside Pope John Paul Elementary School. Residents could offer their respects to the school survivors as well as the children that never made it home. Those who did survive are still living with their experience.
The school system broke the spirits of a lot of children, and the spirit of those children, some of them couldn't bring their spirits back up to the level where they could function.
A lot of stories over my tenure as a chief, and they really hit the heart, and they really have an impact on your mind and your thought process of what our young people went through in those residential schools.
It's a legacy that's going to be with us for a long time.
Those looking to learn more should visit orangeshirtday.org. Avery McRae, TBT News.
Kiiwetinoong MPP Saul Mamakwa is questioning the provincial government about its plans to protect remote First Nation communities from the second wave of COVID-19. Case numbers on reserves were low during the first wave, but concerns are now growing as cases spike across Ontario.
Since I've been up north growing up, I know governments come and go. Programs come and go. Funding comes and goes. And so that happens. As Ontario enters a second, more serious wave of COVID-19, what is this government going to do to support these communities against the second wave?
Regional Chief Archibald to the Grand Chiefs, especially and including Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler with the bigger challenges of protecting isolated communities and the chiefs of those communities. I would say, given the number of COVID cases in those communities, they and we have done a great job. We will continue to remain engaged and make the priority investments to protect those communities. He has the word of the Premier and my word.
Coming up after the break, an area woman completes a near 350-kilometer protest against a proposed nuclear waste repository. This past week, an area resident finished a month-long 339-kilometer trek to protest against a proposed nuclear waste storage center near Ignace. Darlene Nikan started her trip on September 4th in Ignace and traveled up Highway 599 to Silver Dollar, then to Sioux Lookout, before looping down toward Dryden. She then returned to Ignace on September 20th. She says she and the other residents who joined her on the walk want to see more consultation with area First Nations regarding the Nuclear Waste Management Organization's proposed facility, specifically with band members, not just community leaders.
Past Chief Hedman, whatever, they have never told us about this nuclear thing. They never consented us, and we never gave our consent, and they never consulted with us about anything about this nuclear thing.
The previous chief is communicating with the band members, is posting on the Ignace golfing page. That's not membership page. That's not even community membership page. It's a golf page. So that's where Edward Mashimides is posting all the consultation papers or whatever they're posting. It's not even like reaching the members.
Nikan says she's proud of her accomplishment and says it won't be a one-time event. She just hopes that COVID-19 will subside, allowing more people to join her next time. Thunder Bay Rainy River MP Marcus Pawlowski is looking into concerns over loopholes regarding cross-border fishing on two northwestern Ontario lakes. The Canada-US border splits both Rainy Lake near Fort Frances and Lake of the Woods near Kenora. Pawlowski is looking for endorsement from Fort Frances Council of a letter he authored calling on the federal government to better monitor those waterways for cross-border anglers. There have been reports from guides that Americans staying at U.S. resorts are exploiting a loophole in the border restrictions. They can enter Canadian waters as long as they don't anchor or make contact with Canadian soil or other boats. The guides claim Americans are fishing on the Canadian side of the lakes without a non-resident license, putting stress on fish populations. Pawlowski notes there are also concerns that some Americans bring firearms into Canada this way without permits. He says the current Canadian laws need to be enforced by the federal government.
And maybe seeing whether we can't get more Border Patrol to actually be going around by boat on the lakes to checking for violations. And then the second aspect is the law was changed, and the concern is that this is kind of a one-sided deal because there's a lot more Americans than Canadians. There's a lot of Americans coming to the Canadian side, taking a Canadian resource, which is our fish stocks.
In the letter, Pawlowski states Grand Council Treaty Number 3 has also reached out to his office requesting intervention as they've noticed fewer fish in the water. They believe the actions of the U.S. anglers are infringing upon their treaty rights. Well, that'll do it for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.